Hello, this
Hello.
is an interview for Cast in Stone. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Adam Tobias Coleman, and I'm joined by, would you please introduce yourself by name, your profession, and any groups or associations that you're part of that are relevant to this interview?
Yeah, so my name is Solomon OB. I'm a poet, um, I guess now an activist, and I guess the organisation that would be most relevant is a group called ACA in Bristol, which stands for African Caribbean Assembly, like the youth chapter. Yeah.
Marvelous. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Um, the purpose of this interview is to um, discuss the contestation of the statue of Edward Colston in Bristol. Would you please tell me how you came to be interested in the statue of Edward Colston? What brought it to your attention?
I'll be completely honest, like the the only time I was really aware of what that statue was and what it represented was when it was being pulled down on June 7th. Yeah.
Thank you. And who then does this statue represent? What did this person do in history, and how did you learn about that?
Um, what what does this person represent? It's a great question, a deep question. Um, I think that question depends on who you ask it to. Will have a very different answer. I think for a lot of people on the day, on June 7th, it represented um, not just a reminder of a history that uh, is what it is, but it also, I think it represents more kind of a celebration rather than a marking of what happened, which is, I'm guessing, why people took it upon themselves to bring it down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's a celebration of what exactly, um, or of whom?
Well, celebration of a man who made his trade, his living off the backs of other people, off the backs of, say, melanated people, black people, um, and yeah, I think when I think about that day, and I think about kind of the backlash that comes from it, and people talk about erasing history. Um, I think for a lot of people, including myself, it actually highlighted and emphasized, no, this is who this figure was, this is what he did and what he represented. Um, and I think there's definitely ways to be able to uh, start to tackle that history, um, reconcile with it without the erasure that so many people claim.
You've mentioned June the 7th, 2020, a number of times. Would you please take me back to that day and walk me through what happened from your perspective?
Yeah, so for me, um, we're talking right in the middle of, I think, the first lockdown through the pandemic in 2020. Um, and for a lot of people, it was their first time kind of gathering in any group of numbers for a while. Um, a lot of, I guess you could say tension, you could call it excitement, you could say a lot of different things that were in the air. Um, but I guess this big kind of feeling of the unknown. And then I just remember walking out, coming from Easton, moving to like the town centre, and then you slowly start to get a sense of how many people are gathering, um, and then yeah, College Green, heard a few speeches, the organisers kind of trying to set the tone and rally people for the day, and this must be, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes into us starting to walk, and I'm kind of like, say, maybe in the last third of people that are moving. And as we're just coming down from College Green, towards the fountain, you just hear this roar just erupt and wave kind of past you. I'll never forget how that felt. But obviously at the time I didn't know what it was. We didn't know what happened. And then so we were kind
How
of
did it feel?
How did it feel? Ah, again, because you don't know what's happened, but you're just hearing this huge cheer, and it's like it rushes through your whole body. So there's a sense of excitement because you want to know what's gone on. You're already absorbing the kind of like the jubilation from whatever has happened, and like I think even though we didn't know what it was yet, there was this kind of feeling to celebrate that was like passing through us as the sound and the way the bit hit us. Yeah.
And what happened as you got closer to the origin of that wave?
Yeah. It was kind of a sense of being a bit dazed and a bit confused because even though I wasn't like overly aware of the statue and whatever, like you knew what was there. And then the first thing I noticed was there were people, black people, stood on the plinth. Actually, like a friend of mine, and he's got a megaphone and he's giving a speech. And I think by this point, actually, Colston, the statue, had just started to be dragged away. So like you're processing so much, and it's like it almost doesn't register because it's so, I guess, so foreign, so unexpected. But yeah, a lot a lot going on.
And what role did you play in relation to the clinic that day?
So yeah, shortly after my friend came down, I just felt called in so many ways to go up and say something. In the time between George Floyd's murder and the protests on June 7th, I just been writing loads to kind of work out how I felt. I knew I wanted to speak on the day, and actually had spoke to the organisers to go and speak at Castle Park later. So I had like a bunch of I had like this scroll that I'd written, like this poem that came out of me. So I was just planning to say that later on, but yeah, the space opened up, and I just kind of let myself flow in the moment and speaking a lot of things that felt like, even though it wasn't my intention, I ended up speaking for a lot of people and kind of channeling and echoing like the sentiment of that moment, and just trying to. I don't think I was conscious of it so much at the time, but like I guess guiding or controlling the energy of that moment and reminding people kind of what we're here for, the people that come before us, this long like legacy of activists, of people standing up and you know making a stand for something. So all of that was kind of just like coming into me, through me, out of me, and also as well trying to really highlight the fact that, you know, this is the first time that we have been in community for a while, and a lot of people, most people are masked up. But I was trying to say to people like, make sure that this experience doesn't just have to be a serious one. We're obviously dealing with very serious like themes and we're here for a serious reason, but like look into the eyes of the person next to you, like you know, have conversations on race and find out where people are in themselves, because it's a constant journey for all of us in our understanding. And like because it felt as well in a big way that there was a shift in like white math consciousness around this time with like the black squares, and just like I just seen a lot of people on my social media who had never been vocal about race before or their understanding of it. And suddenly, for whatever reason, a lot of people were speaking up, and felt like they had been touched in a way they hadn't before. So I guess I was trying to encourage people to lean into that as well, and to speak on that too.
You said that you felt called to move into the space that opened up on the plinth. Called by whom?
That is a question. That is a question. I could not that's a question I couldn't answer directly. All I could really say is that I think for the first time, at least that viscerally, my voice wasn't just my own. And up to that point, I think I'd done a lot of work working myself out through my voice, through poetry, through writing, to understand like myself as a Black British person, whatever that means. And I think I'd done enough work to that point of figuring myself out that I was then able to, consciously or not, speak for the collective. So yeah, I think whoever, whatever was calling me, was just asking me to be open in that moment and to speak.
And you shared some words. Did you share a poem? Is there a particular poem that resonated in that moment with the people around you, or is there a particular sentence that you said that you think really captured the moment, or captured the attention of the people around you?
Yeah, the main, I must have been up there for like 10, 15 minutes. Didn't feel like it, but yeah, but the main thing from all that came through was if you're not here tomorrow, if you're not here next year, if you're not here in 6 years, 10 years, a decade down the line, if this work we're doing now does not feed into our children and our children's children, we have failed. Yeah.
Thank you. What happened after you came down from the plinth?
For me, something I was really keen to own was like, I was jubilant. I was like so high. And there were people playing music. It's the middle of Bristol. We know what Bristol is like, can be like. So there was this very much like a party atmosphere, and there was one part of my head that was conflicted about that. Again, we're here for something serious, but then I just went with what the energy was and said like, be respectful, because you looked around and you saw people doing certain things they maybe you shouldn't have been doing in that space. So be respectful, remind yourself what you're here for, but there's no reason why you can't bring joy into protest. Oh, are you still there?
I'm still here. I'm just moving to a shadier spot where the sun is on me.
Yeah.
Please do continue.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the first things I remember doing is like being met by a lot of friends who were like congratulating me on the moment, and then we were just dancing to some drum and bass for a minute or two and just soaking up the vibe of what just happened, and then kind of like refocus, move on again, and we move from the thing on towards Castle Park.
What role did you have in what happened to the statue?
As in it being pulled down and taken off?
And I guess being buried.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to remember if it was even there by the time I got there. I know it obviously definitely been taken down because I saw human beings on the plinth. I think it might have just been there for like a minute or two, and then I saw people. I honestly can't remember. I think I remember seeing people taking it away. Yeah, I must have done, because I was torn between, do I go and follow the statue, or do I stay here and listen to the speeches? So I stayed, and then I think I must have seen or heard actually later during the day what had happened.
And in your opinion, how were the people who were either toppling or rolling the statue racialized? And in your opinion, does that matter?
Yeah, so from what I heard a lot afterwards, the majority of people that, if not all, at least from what I was told, that had like lassoed and pulled the statue down were white. And I do think there is something to be said for that. I do think, even looking at it symbolically, like what is it representing? Mean? You had a group of white people that took it into their hands to reconcile with some of their like racial history, pull down a oppressive image, an oppressive symbol, and at the same time make space for black voices to be heard. I don't know how much of that is intentional. I don't know how much of that just happened the way it happened. But if that's the narrative that's to be believed, and that's what I remember in my head, then it's quite a powerful thing for me. And I think it is a symbol and like a through line that I feel like a lot of people want to see mirrored in society. That it's not just about like black voices or black people constantly fighting for their own space to be heard. There is a part to play by all sides, and I guess the blueprint of white Caucasian people, whoever taking ownership of their part in this narrative and creating space through removing that symbology, it goes a long way.
So the statue was toppled during a Black Lives Matter protest. What specifically black voices were raised in contestation of the statue on that day? And to your knowledge, have ever been raised in contestation of that statue? What specifically black voices?
So can you say the question again?
Yeah. So given that the statue was toppled during a Black Lives Matter protest, I'm wondering what have black voices been saying about that statue, both on the day and to the extent that you're aware before that day and maybe after that day?
Yeah, so I mean, what I've heard is a real range of, I guess, opinions on it. Some people saying that it's just a statue, they don't really care, they're not really fussed about, the whole effort to rename like streets and university lecture halls and building names. Some people just think that's lip service. Some people, similar to myself, think that like symbolically it represents something really important, and it can be a catalyst for re-engaging with history, highlighting, especially in Bristol, the colonial past, and the actual legacy of what that means and how that's kind of set us up to arrive at the point we're at today. So yeah, it's definitely, from my experience, been a real mix of how people feel about it. Some people feel that it's, say for example, Colston Hall, off the back of that being changed to Bristol Beacon, people see it as, again, like lip service or excuse me, surface level change. But to me, I think all I can speak as is as myself and someone of my generation. Moments like that, they can be huge depending on what we do with them, because it is like completely throwing everything back up into the air and allowing people, I guess, an access point to something that they might not have felt either interested in, connected to. But it's a real opportunity to engage the conversation for a new generation, I guess.
You mentioned your participation in a group called African and Caribbean Assembly. Could you tell me a little about that group and what has been that group's position or stance on the statue of Edward Colston?
Yeah, so I'm sure you're aware of Cleo Lake. The day before the statue came down, she called me and said, "Would you like to be part of this group that I'm setting up, African Caribbean Assembly, the youth chapter?" She said that she's spoken to a handful of other people, and we kind of left it at that point. Then obviously June 7th happened, the protest, speaking of Plimp, and for me personally, it was this moment of like, I guess you could say I was like radicalized by fate. Yeah, and all this stuff. I'd never seen myself before as an activist. I'd never seen myself kind of in that space. I'd done a few poems exploring race and what it meant to me, and going back through history, through poetry, but I never would have called myself an activist. But yeah, that obviously it changed a few things. And then ATA, our first, let's say our first assignment was to save the Rastafari Cultural Centre, which was on Grosvenor Road. As the council, who had actually given that building as a space to fight for justice for Marlon Thomas, who was like racially assaulted. It's back in '93 now. So yeah, the building was given
1993.
Yeah, 1993. I think the majority of the people that keep Marlon to this day is still in a wheelchair. What the judge described as a living death. Can't speak. Needs like round the clock care. Yeah, so it's a horrible story. But the building was.
And this happened in Bristol.
Yeah, this was up on the Downs. I think he was like, 18 years old, maybe younger, and he's gone to the Downs on a bank holiday. And a bunch of the fairground staff have gone around looking for targets, essentially, with like baseball bats and spanners, and yeah. And so I think the majority of them received light sentences. A lot of them got away with it completely. But his family set up a campaign, the Justice for Marlon Thomas campaign, and that was ran from this building on Grosvenor Road, which then later became the Rastafari Cultural Centre. So yeah, our first assignment was to try and block the sale, which we were successful on, and get the building back into the hands of the Mandeli family, the Selassie family, which we are in the process at the moment of a fundraiser, trying to raise £20,000 to secure the building. We're at what, 8,000 now. So.
And when you say this was
successful, I guess. Ish.
And when you say this was your first assignment, you mean that on the day after the statue of Colston was toppled, the first thing you focused upon was saving the centre.
So this must have been like, say, maybe like a week or two. Yeah, myself, Leo, a few others went down to the centre to speak to Ras Mandeli, and just understand the story, because it goes a long way back. But yeah, that was our first assignment.
Why do you think that your first assignment had nothing to do with the statue, or apparently had nothing to do with the statue?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I'm glad that it didn't, because I think it was far more community focused, far more grassroots. And I think it's not to say that people jump on a bandwagon. I think it's easy to put all the focus on a statue, which has its merit for being contested and being engaged with. But I think keeping the focus on like the actual community and people themselves and what difference can we make in their lives. So, for example, Ras Mandeli, I think he's been in that building for like 30 plus years, and he's been he's been serving the community that he lives in all that time. Like people come there for a place of guidance, to get solace, to get direction, and that's his legacy, that's his life. And I think like when it comes to the activism space, there's so many things that you can tackle. You can go at government and legislation and lobbying, and you can go deep into the protest zone and really put your energy there, although it can be very taxing. But I think for me, engaging in something that is very like person to person, where you can see and feel the tangible change in someone's life, is really important.
Did you ever, did ACA ever move on to any discussions about the statute, or did the ACA always have other things to work on?
I mean, ACA's main focus, it kind of like it was simmering, and I guess coming to a boiling point straight after, because obviously everyone's heads and hearts are in that space, and then I think just because of inexperience and lack of like real organization at that time, it kind of fizzled. Possibly can be reignited, but its main focus was really, I guess, taking all the energy that was there with Black and brown people and trying to focus it into a place of like understanding what to do with ourselves as a Black community.
You mentioned former Lord Mayor Cleo Lake. Cleo Lake, amongst other things, conducted consultations and wrote a report on the basis of those consultations called Project Truth. Cleo was engaged by the Legacy Steering Group, and now known as the Bristol Legacy Group, to do this work. What do you recall of Project Truth or the Legacy Steering Group, and what participation did you have in their consultation?
If I'm not mistaken, I think this is my first time hearing of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you follow a radio program that Cleo did on Radio Ujima or Ujima Radio?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay. What do you recall of the We Are Bristol History Commission?
Again, I'll be honest. Because there were so many kind of like projects and campaigns in this space that were being like floated around, and me being new to the space, and as well as going through a very big internal shift that I just did not expect off the back of everything that happened with Colston. There's a lot that kind of like went over my head, let's say.
That's okay. There was a survey of the city about the statue, what should happen to it next. Did you participate in that survey?
No.
Mhm. And there was a museum, temporary museum exhibition that used the statue, and it was at the M Shed. Did you hear about or did you visit that exhibition?
Yeah, I heard about this one. And I know one of their things was they didn't want to re-erect the statue. They kept it on the side. And yeah, and like I guess again, people talking about was it being in a museum and an exhibition, was that again celebrating it or was it just commemorating the moment itself? And I think it was important to do that because that was history. Um, yeah, is that still going now?
It was a temporary exhibition. Um, so, how do you feel about the what should happen to the statue now? Um, do you have any particular feelings about what should happen to it?
Um, I mean, I think ultimately it whatever happens to it, whether it ends up being placed or whatever's done with it, what does it now come to represent? Because I think it was taken down because people felt it represented a celebration of a dark past. Um, Now, undoubtedly, like you can't look at it without it being an illumination of a dark past. Um, but yeah, I think it very much depends on who is in control of the narrative of whatever happens to it. Um, I've heard of stuff about like merchant venturers having it and yeah, stuff. But I think what's most important is actually like the story that's told around who that person was, what they actually did, the legacy that leaves, and what we choose to do with all those things.
Mhm. What stories are you trying to tell? What past events or which people of the past are you trying to remember, and why?
Mm. I've been really interested of late of looking at the agency of the Black Smile and
The
Black
black.
Joy. Smile.
Oh, tell
Mm.
me more.
Okay, so uh, recently, maybe like New Year 22, um, started getting into tap dance
Mhm.
and really going back and looking at all the weighty history that comes with that. Obviously, like vaudeville and blackface and minstrelsy and this very very blurred line between what is an expression of like black joy, an expression of like traditional dance and traditional communication when the drum was taken away, body percussion and tap dance um, came in its place. But then how then that was then packaged through vaudeville, through minstrel performances, and how uh, the roles that were typically seen, so like by Bojangles,
Mm.
servitude, almost childlike, and this kind of like performative, very much for the white gaze, broad black smile. So then fast forward now to 2022, um, being aware of this history, engaging in the dance myself and feeling how much joy comes from it, but finding yourself dancing in spaces that are predominantly white. It is predominantly the white gaze. And you have this kind of conflict in yourself of like, you can say coonery and, you know, all that heavy loaded stuff.
Mhm.
And so for me, yeah, I'm interested in making a project that starts to break down a lot of these reasons why Black men in particular, our joy, our smile, our softness is very, very policed, even if that's just by ourselves because of the society that we and the world that we come from.
You
And
said it's very, very what?
policed.
Oh, yes.
Um, and yeah, I guess being on this journey of making peace with that for myself, like knowing that how do I say this? If if all the things I've just said, if the weight of all that history and the perception of it all has the power to take your smile away, your joy away, then it feels like it all wins. It feels like all of that stuff that's happened, yeah, that they win, instead of like going back into it, kind of breaking apart this history for myself, and I guess coming to an understanding that these performers like a Bojangles, even if it appears like he was just a butler and always had that smile on his face, and was he cooling for the white man? He was operating within the space that he had agency to be, and he expressed himself in a very narrow confines of what he was given on TV screen. And so whilst it's a very kind of like monochromatic expression of what a Black man was at that time, I think to just dismiss it as having no like validity, no value, does a disservice to the time that he found himself in. Yeah.
Is this something about which you're planning to write a poem, or is there another artistic medium in which you're working?
Yeah, I really want to explore poetry and tap dance together, and yeah, tell essentially what I've just said to you. It'll be good to have that transcript actually, because I've not said that out loud yet. But to say what I've said, add on the element of that rage and the expression of rage through the dance as well. Putting it all together with like this is an ancestral dance. This is a ceremonial dance, and dances from Africa have always held a very strong meaning, and they've always had very particular parts to play in the community, whether that's like a dance for weddings or coming of age ceremonies. So yeah, like making a body of work really that deals with all this stuff: Black joy, Black smile, white gaze. Yeah.
And what is the difference between harnessing or producing a memorial, an artistic memorial through the medium of bronze or marble or stone, and producing an artistic memorial through the medium of poetic words and dance? And what are the benefits or disadvantages? Why would you choose poetry and dance over bronze or marble and stone?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to what you want to say, and then therefore how you want to say it. I think there are some points that poetry could make that same music couldn't quite hit, or there are some statements that don't need words or gesture, and just an image or a statue itself can make that point more potently. So I really think it comes down to like intention, and yeah, then finding whatever mixture of mediums or single medium makes the most sense to get that across. I think for me, I'm really enjoying now playing with word and dance kind of side by side, because they're almost polar. That like a picture paints 1,000 words. Like the movement is very much the same, like a single gesture or a facial expression, or it can communicate so much. And sometimes too many words obscure the essence of what a person's trying to say. So I think playing between those two of like, if I have a central theme and a message that I'm trying to get across, playing with saying it through movement and saying it through like minimal words, very like pointed words, and then finding a place where they meet in the middle.
Now, we've spoken about, this will be my final question. We've spoken about the fact that the statue was toppled during a Black Lives Matter protest, and specifically Black voices in that protest. Given what you said on that day, given what you heard said on that day, given what you felt and what you think or you understand other people to have felt on that day and afterwards, to what extent, in your opinion, have Black voices been listened to?
Around that event?
Around the statue or more widely?
I think honestly time will tell. I think just from my perspective, someone who's from like a fairly youngish generation and is kind of like again new to this space. Even in my time, I feel like I've seen a shift. I feel like I've seen there's more Black visibility, both physically and vocally. There's more Black influence. I think we have always been cultural leaders. I think we have always been culturally very important. I think we've always been massive cultural influences. And I think a lot of that has been again going back to tap dance or even rock and roll. There's countless examples where we are being borrowed from or stolen from culturally, but not credited. We are being what we produce as cultural currency is clearly seen because culture or mass draws from that, and Black culture always seems to be the prevailing culture in terms of fashion and music and da 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 da. And I think when other areas of society start to match up to that same level of like visibility and influence, in areas where we're not seen in that same light, whether that's like the sciences, in law, in the education system, etc., then I think the balance starts to then come to a place where it should be. So I always hold hope, because even though like the world's still in the state that it's in, and there's a lot of things that need to be corrected, the needle is moving, at least in my perception. And yeah, the Black voice is powerful.
Solomon, thank you very much for sharing with me your perspective on the contestation of the statue of Edward Colston.
It's been a pleasure. It really has.
Unless you wish to say anything else on the record, I'll turn off the recording now. Is that okay?
Yeah, one last thing to say.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I think for me on a very personal note, it took until very, very shortly before we first met, actually, at that meeting. It took from 2020 through till about then to reconcile in myself, I guess, like a new self-image, dealing with a lot of kind of like trauma around your own identity that moment brought up, when people see you in a new light that you are struggling to step into and embody. And this project and you reaching out to me on it, it feels very timely because I feel like I've just come to a place of like self-security, and being able to own that person or that new side of myself that came out through June 7th and the process that came from it. So yeah, just a sense of, I guess, understanding that like these things do take time to be able to set in and to be able to hold them in the right way. So thank you.
Thank you for your work, Solomon.